It's that time!
We're here. We're live, y'all.
We are always live on Wednesday at 3 p.m. This is Sell Like a CPCU. How you doing, Precious?
I am good. This is my favorite day of the week. This is the highlight of my day, so it's a good thing.
Awesome. Some normalcy for you, I think, is also probably a really good thing right about now.
Yes, absolutely. Finding a groove and a rhythm, and I'm like, okay, this is starting to feel like life. So yes.
That's good. A little return to the norm, which is good. A reminder, this is Sell Like a CPCU, a production of the CPCU Agents and Brokers Interest Group. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet to get this information out there. We do take comments and questions live on the air, so you do get to be part of the conversation. And a reminder that we are here to provide tips, tricks, sales tools, hacks, things that help you as an insurance sales professional, regardless of whether you're a CPCU. We're just that charitable and want to help out the industry that much.
Sharing the
sharing the love, sharing the wealth, sharing the love. Yes, yeah. So this one we kind of like put together on the fly. It was just like we looked at each other and we were like, what are we gonna do? We are talking about just the passion, right? The feels that get you into being a sales professional, specifically in the insurance marketplace. Here's the one thing. Most people are like, well, you just do it because the money's good, right? Like, I think a lot of people want to discount it and just be like, well, it's just good money and that's why you sell this stuff. Is that true for you? Like, does the money even matter?
Money always matters.
Yeah. That is true.
Money always matters, but it's so much bigger than that,
Yep.
And so, the whole concept of passion, it was interesting. In the last 2 weeks, I was approached by a family member and a high school friend asking me for insurance career advice, and when I realized that this thing is like, it's a passion, maybe on the cusp of like obsession, there's a couple of conversations I can't resist. And one of them is insurance and the other one is CPCU. So Sell Like a CPCU is like in the money. This is what I do. This is, what gets me going. The concept of we're the good guys, right? And so, when we're addressing our customers' needs, giving them a customized, solution, they're taken care of. And I know that there are a lot of, folks out there that don't necessarily approach it with the same care and concern. And so that's kind of how I sleep at night. I know that if I've got them taken care of, then they don't have to continue to scour the market looking for someone who doesn't have their best interests at heart. So it's beyond the sale, it's beyond the commission. It's really helping people, doing right by people, so that they're not left to their own devices where they're making decisions without, that expert that they can kind of bounce questions off of, and then also that they're doing business with people who really, are concerned, so that piece of it is kind of a uh, it's a little bit of a ministry and a mission on top of a profession, and you just can't beat that. When
Yeah.
you feel that what you do has impact on not just the bottom dollar, but livelihoods, households. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
We're helping people make decisions for what may potentially be the most stressful or upsetting day of their life.
Yes. Yeah. And that altruistic piece of it, it trumps, like, yes, the money is good. Like, when you're successful at it, the money's good. But it trumps all of that. Like, it supersedes what the bank account looks like, or what your monthly commission state looks like. That is something that's always going to be at the core of this industry, regardless of what walk of life you fill or role you fill within the industry. What kind of like turned you onto it? What was like the initial spark? I mean, like me, I have kind of like, I think most of us have like this like topsy-turvy path that just gets us to insurance, but specifically to insurance sales. What kind of like, what was the click that kind of went off?
What brought me home? I tell everyone that, I started my career on the sales side, as many people do. And so, for some organizations and agencies, sometimes being a CSR or even a producer is looked at as kind of an entry level role. It just requires a license, to get started. But then you kind of start to feel it around, and it's more than just answers that were on an exam. This is real life application,
Right.
so you kind of get a little taste of that. But early in career, I didn't know what else was out there, and so I was like, okay, now that I have a good foothold, let me kind of spread my wings and explore, some other roles in the ecosystem. So I left the agency world for a while and I went to claims. And again, shout out to all those people who have very successful, thriving careers in claims.
Yep.
It takes a certain type of temperament, and compassion, really. I think that all of us share in insurance. You got to care about people in order to do well in insurance.
Oh yeah.
But my big eye-opening moment in claims was that you can't change the coverage after the loss has already happened. And so when I would engage with these insureds and, the disappointment sometimes, rather than the relief of, oh, I chose well, I bought a policy, this is handling things exactly how I imagined it would, and, I've got peace of mind. Instead, I was looking at, certain policies that were just bare minimum. Right.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
bare minimum in a situation where they could have benefited from the extra. And now, granted, memories are never truly reliable, because it's really easy for the insured at that moment to say, no one ever told me. And maybe they did, and maybe they didn't. I don't know. But that really kind of fueled the fire, because that gave me kind of some stories from the field that I was able to take back to the sales desk and say, hey, I know it's really tempting, every dollar counts, but let me kind of give you an illustration of why, in exchange for that, that 2% rate reduction, you probably don't want to double your deductible. And this is kind of some real life. So having moved around, from claims to underwriting and some of the other, roles that support the industry, I honestly felt like it makes me a better salesperson. Now that I understand it and I've seen it from the different perspectives, I can come back now and engage in, with the other, partners in this, industry, because, someone, who's ever done any sort of underwriting, I have that appreciation for complete submissions. Imagine
Oh yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I can give, a high level narrative. Hey, I know what it looks like, but let me give you some context and some color as why, we're going about it this way. But to be able to bring all of that back to where I started and to be able to use that richness of experience now and say, hey, I'm not telling you what I just read in a book in theory. I'm telling you things that I've witnessed with my own eyes. Like, this is, I've got a made up mind now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that all of that is, I actually kind of wish I had lived some lives elsewhere in the insurance industry. I mean, like, my path in the insurance industry has been mostly sales. The only thing that's really broken that up is I've had some positions that were strictly service based, but even then you're still selling kind of, especially if you're like in a big, kind of production brokerage or agency that focuses on that. So no, I could imagine that gives you like an incredible appreciation for that, like so much so than, more though than I would have. I kind of like the challenge of it. That's like I like the altruism. I'm a very kind of like people person. I like the communication and the interaction. Right, it's not mechanical. There's some emotion and some stuff that gets involved in the sales process and the consultative process. And something that really kind of fuels me is being a problem solver. Like I like being presented with a challenge, especially like a unique one. And then having to develop a solution, right? Or find the maybe I can't provide the solution myself, but I can go out there and I can find the other folks that are professionals in my network that can help, find a solution to that. That's always been something that really appealed to me, was that kind of like, just being handed a box of stuff and they're like, you put the puzzle together, I've always appreciated that amount. I have to let you fly solo for like 30 seconds because I have to run to let someone in the door, but let me kind of like drop a hand grenade and then walk away and then I'll be right back, all right? So all right. The hand grenade I'm going to drop for you is, was there ever a point that you wavered where you were like, you know what, sales just might not be my thing? Was there ever some time that you were like shook and you had to kind of like recover?
That's a good one. Okay, I'll monologue here for 30 seconds. So every day, sales is an environment of, what have you accomplished today? Because it's no secret that, our revenue is, comes from bringing in, new customers. And so, there are days where it just feels like you're climbing this mountain and you'll never, reach the top of it. But it's worthwhile because there's so much need. And, there's so many places where this insight is invaluable. And so when you remember the why, and just like anything else, regardless of what your career path is, if it's sales, if it's service, if it's claims, if it's underwriting, it's really important to do some introspection and figure out and, decide on and commit to your why. Why did you get into it? There are times, because that is the temptation of being well-rounded and having, multiple tools in your toolbox that you can pull out. So I'm tempted on a regular basis. I'll see posts from companies that, I follow that have openings in underwriting, and they have openings in, in claims or product management. And the temptation is there. You're like, hey, maybe, I pass the torch and, I slide over and grow in this other area. But I keep coming back to, being the champion of the message, that it's going to take, there's still not enough of us who specialize in this space intentionally. And there's so much knowledge that we have to, between, passing the torch to who's coming behind us, continuing to have bigger market share, deeper penetration into the different, places that we specialize. When you realize that you're placed in a position so that you can impact those around you, it's enough to get you to stick and stay. All right.
Homework number one for everyone who's watching. In the chat, tell me how much smack Precious talked about me while I was gone. That's what I want to know. Just let me know. Yeah, life happens. Sometimes you're in the middle of a live cast and you have to go let someone in the house. But I can tell you that there were times in my life where, and I caught the tail end of your explanation, there were times in my sales career life where I felt like the sales portion was emphasized too much and the consultative relationship building portion was not emphasized as much, or maybe even not even like thought about, like didn't even care, right? Like they just wanted turn and burn, just go to the next one. Yeah, exactly. Precious talked about my mob ties and dialed 911 while we were all whoo. I might have to go back to the front door again, people. So just know if I get dragged off, Precious will finish up the show. Everyone knows I have a cousin whose middle name is The. Just saying. But yeah, the times where I really felt shook was those times when I felt like the production was overemphasized and the relationship was de-emphasized. And then the other times that I felt shook was organizations that I was a part of that I felt like there was no support. It was just like, all right, they threw you in the water and they were like, swim, which, it can build really strong salespeople, but at the same time, you also end up losing those people that maybe would take a little bit longer in order to be successful or are going to come at it from a little bit of a different way, and so that's really like I had one instance where I started off my insurance sales career with Prudential, and again, we don't play favorites, like we don't advocate one company versus another or anything like that, and this is not a reflection on Prudential, it's a reflection on myself. Life insurance just isn't my thing. Like I have no problem like cross-selling life, okay? But it's not my bag. Like I can talk intelligently about it a little bit, I get into more than my fair share of scraps online talking about whether or not you should buy term and invest the rest or buy a UL or a vol policy. But that being said, it just like, doing that 8, 10, 12 hours a day just wasn't my bag. And so, yeah, it actually helped me to then find something else, which was getting my property and casualty license, which then kind of allowed me to transition into a different direction. But you know what? To this day, I still use sales skills that I learned at Prudential selling life insurance. The idea of an assumed close works in certain situations. Just the idea of laying out a process of building rapport and establishing yourself as an authoritative knowledge, expert in a field in those first, 5-10 minutes at the kitchen table. All of that was really, really helpful in my career moving forward.
I'm really shocked to hear you say that you didn't. I mean, obviously P&C, is where I specialize. But the conversation I had last night, which got me thinking about passion, was actually about life insurance. And so,
Yep.
Like I said, is a cousin of mine who was approached by a company and said, "Hey, what are your thoughts?" And it was too much to text back. And I was like, "Hey, let me know if I can call you after dinner and kind of give you the walkthrough," right?
Yep.
And so my second wave, my epiphany about life insurance really came after I finished CPCU. I had that itch for another designation. What letters am I going after next? And I decided to, kind of step into the CLU realm for a moment. Mm-hmm. So one of the first courses, and I went and I did the in-person class, and it was on estate planning, right? Which some of the stuff is so dry. Oh my gosh. So I'm sitting here in this class and I'm like, wait one stinking minute. You mean to tell me that people are out here and they make their entire livelihood is around showing people where to hide the treasure so that it could be handed down and not eaten up with, probate and taxes and, and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so that's really when I kind of had this awakening that oftentimes those sort of strategies and products and leveraging these things are reserved for the really affluent. Okay. But these are not products that are outside of the reach of the everyday working class.
Right.
And so to be able to explain, so case in point, again, early in career, because I started off on life and health as well. I was always trying to think outside of the box of how do I get in front of people and catch them in a season where they're open to have the conversation and they have the ability, right? Because you can have need all day if you don't have capacity.
Yes.
Then you got to have an equal dose of both. And so, when you dine out and you go to a restaurant and the restaurant hands you like a little packet if you have kids at the table, and it's usually some sort of coloring sheet and some crayons folded into some origami, right? To kind of keep the kids busy. And so I had a girlfriend of mine who prepared taxes at a local tax prep place. And so I had got the inspiration from dining out. I had gone, created a bunch of these little packets, and I would go to the tax prep place after work, so after hours when people were coming in to get their taxes done, and I kind of hosted the kitty corner, okay? So I entertained the kids so that mom and dad could focus on getting their taxes done without wrestling, the kids in the office. It's all pre-COVID, obviously.
Yep.
And so I did that for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously to get into good graces with mom and dad, because I knew that the majority of the clientele that was there, they were anticipating a refund. Okay. Number two, by virtue of the fact that I'm entertaining their kids, that meant they had dependents. Okay. And so I would, again, part of the little packet, the little crayons and the little sucker that I gave them, had a business card, for them to, follow up with me. Right. And so that's what I told them. I'm like, hey, I'll entertain, the Rugrats here in exchange for you got to call me and let me do like my little pitch over the phone later.
Yep.
Right. And they're like, yeah, sure. And so the angle that I leveraged here was that it is super important to make sure that we have life insurance coverage on children, not because we anticipate our children are going to pass, but because we don't know what the future holds. So if little Bobby goes on and develops a really nasty addiction, gets into some sort of legal trouble, or even goes into a line of work that is hard to insure, you've already got something in place, right? And so the company that I used to write for, they had these, limited pay whole life policies, so they're paid up after a number of years, right? And so if I can set them up on like a 15 or a 20 pay on a whole life policy on the child and set it up on a yearly payment around tax time, because I know that mom and dad are going to get a lump sum of money, and I know it might be a struggle to keep up with a monthly payment throughout the year. So I would convince them, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get a little policy set up on the child. You're going to pay it on a yearly basis, so it should coordinate around the time you're getting your tax refund every year. The beauty of it is by the time the child is grown, that policy is fully paid for, and it has cash value. So that was my marketing strategy. And I sold a lot of it that way, And so I was, I really had a heart for, explaining to people how these, again, the whole, premise of insurance, which is the transference of risk, that the best thing that you can do is make provisions now while you have the ability, the health, whatever, because when the time comes that you're going to need it, that's too late to be kind of thinking it through. And the big struggle with, again, the working class is that the bulk of us, I don't know what the studies show now, we very heavily rely on employment, workplace benefits. So people will tell you, well, I have coverage at work. Like, awesome. How long have you been on that job? What are the chances that you're going to retire from that job? Because when you leave that job 10 years from now, you're going to be 10 years older. And it's going to be that much more expensive if it's even possible, because what you have now may or may not be portable, right? You might not be able to take it with you. So anyhow, it's really interesting, because what I have found in today's day and age for all of my life and health sales folks out there is that the COVID pandemic has created a captive audience.
It's true.
Before, you will talk life insurance and, oh my gosh, that's how you clear a room, right? You tell someone you sell life insurance. They're like, oh, that's morbid. I don't want to think about that. I'm too young to talk about that. But as we saw, over 500,000 people here in the U.S. die, a lot of those people, they might have gone from peak of health to graveside in like 2 weeks, and they're in hospital rooms where family members aren't even allowed to come sit bedside, and then you compound that with the fact that so many people lost jobs. And so they don't have those workplace benefits anymore. And so they're looking for ways to, again, gain coverage, because they know that the vulnerability is increased and the access. So from what I've heard, life is good right now in life and health.
It is.
Phones are ringing, and so we have to always kind of keep our finger on the pulse. So I know that was very long-winded about the life, but to your point, it's those strategies when you see what works and what doesn't work. And when you identify who your target audience is and how do you relate to them, and you're really able to, again, those real life examples are huge.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the passion piece of it is, I think you went about it the right way. You found a creative way, and thank you, Ed, for that comment. That was, extremely creative sales strategy. Um, but you found a creative way not to like grift on people and sell something. You found a creative way to legitimately something that you had buy-in into, and like you felt like you wanted to be involved in, right? Like there wasn't a false front or some kind of like shroud that you were putting over their eyes. You were being authentic, which I think is the most effective sales. Like if there's one thing I could give any salesperson on the face of the planet, is do everything you can to be authentic. If and people have gotten very astute into that sniff test. Like they just kind of, something doesn't smell like it's right here, and so you have to be authentic, and finding that thing that you draw a parallel to, or that you're excited about or interested in, is huge. I mean, like I forget what the old saying is, but like do what you love and you never work a day in your life, or something like that. That's exactly true. I mean, like if you get the ability to work in a space or an industry or something like that, where you get excited to get out of bed and do it every single day. I mean that's that is worth its weight in gold. Like you'll take less money to do that, because at least you're not in your doldrums all the time. But yeah, no, I don't know. Like life insurance, I think I was also like disenfranchised because I wanted to do, like I wanted to be this big Wall Street. Like I watched Wall Street. I wanted to be Michael Douglas and be a robber baron and hunt and kill and stuff like that and make tons of money. And so I wanted to do managed money and investment stuff. And Prudential's like, whoa, we're a life insurance company. Hold on there, Tex. But yeah, no, that was one thing that kind of like shook me a little bit. But I'm really happy. Like what's also funny is in a lot of people's lives, there are just these kind of like happenstance kind of moments that get them to where they end up happening. And we don't get too philosophical. I'm not a big believer in fate. I'm very much a big believer in out of chaos comes patterns, right? And so some of the chaos that got me to where I am is just, sitting in a coffee shop on a Thursday morning with my wife and a baby that is now 2 months old. And I know I'm pretty much on my way out the door selling life insurance. And I just get a call from a headhunter when I had not put my resume out there or anything. I believe it was like the very beginnings of LinkedIn. So like I had a very basic LinkedIn profile out there. And just, I got a call and it was like, hey, we got this job down the street. We see you have a PNC license. Like, would you like to take a swing at it? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's an opportunity. I'll go see what it is, And that kind of like got me on that path of more commercial PNC and eventually getting the CPCU as that gauntlet that I had to go through to be considered competent and actually qualified for the job that they were hiring me for. But yeah, no, it's like, it's so weird. It's so weird. Let me ask you this too. Like, does your passion, like, does it kind of like come and go, or not come and go, but I mean, like, I'm sure you have like days where you're like, I love my job, and then you have days where like I can't stand this. Does it ever get that bad or that high?
So, I had this conversation with someone close just in the past couple of weeks, and was talking about what my vision is for the new agency. How big do I want to grow it? Do I eventually want to, have staff, and kind of what that looks like. And again, shout out to Tony. I know he's in the airport watching right now. But the whole concept of like people leadership, and we've had that discussion. That I came from an environment where I was told that the way to excel is that you had to go into management and you had to have direct reports, and that was just the next natural step. Right. And people management is really peculiar because it's just herding the cats, right? You're trying to figure out how do you motivate adult men and women to do their best job possible, because their job depends on it, And so there have been times that, as a sales manager, I started to kind of have a disconnect from why I got into it versus getting caught up in the, performance reviews and the stats and, stuff like that, where it started to kind of lose its luster. But what I found, and that's how I gauge passion, right? So passion is that activity that you can just get lost in and lose all track of time. You know, passion is that thing that re-energizes you, kind of revitalizes you, and it's you don't get tired of what you're truly passionate about, and so every once in a while when I start to kind of feel that disconnect and I kind of get bogged down in the malaise of, oh, okay, here we go again, this is just more paperwork and stats and stuff like that, and then I reconnect and I get to what really fuels my fire is when I get to kind of pull out that aha moment with someone.
Yeah. Yep.
And you're like, man, it kind of reminds me of, so in my social media time, I'm like clickbait. I tend to go after, they always have those lists of 30 things on Amazon that you didn't even know that you couldn't live without. And I was like,
yeah.
Yes, tell me about that. And you're like, what? This thing does what? And all of a sudden I'm just adding to my wish list, right? I didn't even know this product existed until 0.2 seconds ago. Yeah. And now I've got to have it. And I got to have it. Overnight delivery, right? Yeah. And so when you find that connection, that facet, that piece, and you get excited about it, and then I'm resharing it and I'm retweeting it to everyone I know. It's like, oh my God, I just bought this thing. You totally have to have this thing. Your mind's gonna be blown next time you come over, right? And so when I found that angle to insurance, and I'm like, what? What do you mean that your employees, if they sue you, that your general liability doesn't respond? So when I discovered employment practice liability, mind was blown. Every customer, I went through the book of business that I was running at the time, and if they had work comp, that was a dead ringer. They had an exposure. Yep. Did you know that some creative attorney decided that you discriminated or harassed or something like that, everything you have in place right now, your umbrella, you're insured to the hilt, but you've got this gaping exposure. Man, let me tell you about this thing, right? Yeah. And so kind of the same passion with my Amazon obsession, when I found and discovered different elements like the cyber thing, kind of figuring out what is the new thing that people are not taking advantage of. Because to your point, I think that most consumers kind of rate themselves on a scale of, I just want the bare minimum, whatever's necessary for me to be, compliant, to I pride myself in covering all of my bases, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, obviously the ones that we like to do business with are the ones that intentionally
yes.
like to be prepared. And so when you can point out to them, hey, your slip's showing, let me show you, you've got this, there's a door that's not closed. That's kind of, again, what kind of gets you recharged, and you're like, this is why I do what I do. Yeah. Because regardless if someone buys or not, they could not walk away from this conversation and say, I was unaware.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And to that point, for me, when you tell that story, the imagery that's in my head is the puzzle analogy. It's like, well, you have a piece missing from your puzzle, right? Or when presented with a completely new, prospect or whatever, my job is to assemble the puzzle, sometimes for them. I mean, that's always an interesting. Sometimes I cringe a little bit when this happens, but you walk into a prospect meeting, and they have the binder. Right, and the binder isn't nice and 3-hole punched and everything's orderly and tabs and everything. It's stuff sticking out all over the place, and you're like, oh, here's an endorsement to the CGL policy, and here's your auto schedule from 1985. You're being employed just as much as a housekeeper as you are, the actual insurance broker or the risk manager in that case. But it's just that. It's the putting the pieces together and then, sleuthing your way to figuring out oh, well, you do your business this way, but it's slightly different than all the other manufacturers that make this widget. And so we have to protect you for this exposure that everyone else doesn't really have to worry about. Those things are always the most fun part of the job. I can tell you, my enthusiasm hits a low point during those like really monotonous things that you have to do in order to get to the good stuff. It's reordering the binder, it's sorting out the spreadsheets, and one thing I do with every single one of my municipal clients is the first time that I get in there, within like a month or two, I go do a ride along with their DPW supervisor, and I go look at every single one of the buildings. I want them to walk me through it. I want to see what the condition is, whether or not it's on the schedule to begin with, if it's on there, like if all the information's correct. The time spent palling around with the DPW supervisor is good, but then the time spent in the office afterward, updating the spreadsheet and everything like that, doesn't get my juices going. Like, I'm not like, woo, I'm going to update a property schedule today. Like, that's not my thing. But, yeah, I mean, like, look, that's why you hire service staff when you eventually get big enough, yeah. or you have like a technical assistant or something, or a virtual assistant that you work with. But, yeah, no, it definitely ebbs and flows. But I mean, like, the key is when you are in one of those low points, having those good times to know that you've had in the past and that you're going to have them again, and that really kind of keeps you going.
But this view sometimes of the insurance policy as just a off-the-shelf commodity, right? And so, with the advances in AI and everything's getting more automated and everything else, reminding, customers that these things are just tools that enhance the overall, user experience. These are not a replacement for, the sound advice of, a licensed professional. Again, I'm always plugging Tony on these things. I promise you, I'm not on the payroll. It's just good stuff, man. Good stuff. So,
he's got to pay for his plane ticket.
Right. So he'll be on with us here soon, guys. Talking about the better informed consumer. Right. And so they've already done their due diligence a lot of times. They've already Googled it, and they've kind of put out some feelers in terms of how this stuff is going to go. Because to your point earlier, that is how they're going to fine tune their spidey sense of whether or not what you're saying mirrors what they've already independently verified, or if you're way off base. Okay.
Yep.
And so now my value proposition is I'm going to take all of this data, and I'm going to put it into focus, and we're going to show you how you can make it actionable. Right. And so I had a large account down in South Texas that I called upon. I guess it must have been about a year or two ago now. And they sent me over all of the enforced policies, of course. And, I drive down to Houston, and book an appointment with the VP, and we're kind of combing through it. Right. And so, the way that you execute on these, it feels a little bit like a magic trick. Right. You're like, okay, are these the documents that you recognize?
Yeah.
No, you sent me. So here's my hand, no sleight of hand. I didn't change anything. This is what you have. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's go through these locations. Let's go through, does that limit, is that correct? And I give them the disclaimer up front. What I'm about to go through with you is a risk analysis or a coverage review. I am not the agent of record. I can't speak to anything other than what we can see. So we're both looking at it from the consumer standpoint, right? And so after I red ink it, that's when I come back very kindly and remind them that what you have as an agent, what you lack is a relationship. Because if I had to drive down and tell you how your policy works and show you all of the areas that there are errors or there need to be changes, then that means that there's something someone else didn't do for you.
Right.
And so my question for you now is that one of two things can happen at this point. Either you took copious notes and you're going to play telephone and try to relay to them what I told you needs to be changed, or I've taken the liberty of prepping this AOR, right? I'll be your agent because I know the recommendations that I've made, and I can go in and request them, accordingly. And so, sometimes, again, that is what makes us stand apart. And that's what they realize. And the thing that I love about the agent broker space is that our revenue is already built into the cost. We're not upcharging it, right? And so our commission's already built into the pricing model. And so it's not like, I come with.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, the difference between having it there and having it here is that you have access to me. And so making yourself the, the selling point, the competitive advantage, is a huge opportunity, because I don't quote, and I've said this before, apples to apples. I don't know where you got your apples. Maybe you shopped
Yes.
at the grocery store that only had two variety, and I've taken you to the farmer's market and there's 10 out here. And maybe
Yep.
the only reason you had Red Delicious because you never knew Pink Lady was out there. I don't know. So, you know, current, current
Always go
coverage
Pink Lady.
aside,
Always go Pink
right.
Lady.
And if you can go jazz, man, jazz
Oh,
apples,
yeah.
man, that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I tell them what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation. We're going to identify needs. Then we're going to pull out what you have, and we're going to say, with these needs that we've identified, do you have something in place that would respond to it? And it has to be very prescriptive, right? Because that's where you have to, before you just go doling out meds, you have to figure out what is it you're trying to treat, and how do you know things are getting better.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, just these strategies, when you have a passion for it, and you get out of the mindset of just being an order taker or a number cruncher or a paper pusher, and you realize that every last one of those endorsements and deck pages represent losses that may happen.
Yeah.
That it kind of wakes you up a little bit,
That stewardship, or that, custodianship element to it becomes really evident when you look at it through that lens, right? Like, you are more than just a salesperson. Like, you are literally the person who is at the very least facilitating the means by which this person's business and probably their livelihood can continue to exist after something goes left, right? After something goes wrong. And so, yeah, no, that's a huge component of it. It's like there's also a sense of it's poignant that Tony runs around with the Superman shirt on, because in insurance we are superheroes in to a certain extent, right? Like, when you do your job well, you're saving the day. Like, you're flying in with what you did. Like you said, you don't get any mulligan, right? Like, it's not like, oh shoot, we meant to put that on. No. There's no do-over, right? And so, to that effect, there's some Superman or Batman or whatever your superhero of choice in all of us, I think. Let me ask you this question. So, insurance sales can be a grind. It can really, like, if you're a knucklehead like me, like, you'll forego everything else in your life to be working at the desk or selling the next policy or building the relationship. But it can grind you down. Like, I mean, you can physically or mentally kind of wear down. What's your elixir? What's your tonic of youth that kind of gets you back? Like, what's your diversion or whatever that kind of gets you back on track, so that the next Monday you can wake up and hit it hard?
So I refer back to, when I led a team and there was a temptation to work extra hours and overtime and things like that to try to get caught up.
Yep.
And especially working in a remote environment, my question to them when they would pitch to me why they were going to put in these hours was really straightforward. I said, I would rather you give me an honest 8 than a sloppy 10.
Yeah.
And what does that mean, right? And I'm like, if you can tell me that you, throughout the entire workday, are distraction free, right? Like, you're not just kind of dragging your feet, because here's where it becomes very counterintuitive, right? Is that the longer you work, you've got eye strain, your brain's foggy, you're stressed out, the chances of you doing, the likelihood of you doing more work at less quality increase exponentially once you start to hit, an hour over, once you go from an 8-hour day to 9 to 10, etc. And so oftentimes you're better suited to go ahead and call it a day, turn it off and be fresh and ready to hit it, in the morning, right? And so that's the difficulty for personality types like myself, that don't know how to walk away and how to turn it off. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what a mentor of mine told me some years ago, back to the whole concept of, we're getting ready to hit, daylight savings time. So this is really timely, right? That the whole concept of 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, and then there's another eight, right? And so when you look at these as being finite buckets, none of us gets a second over 24 hours in a day.
Hmm.
And so when you are putting in extra time, where are you robbing that from? Where does that come from?
Yep.
Because you're either taking it out of the eight that, sleep, and, goodness knows there's those of us who've done that. We've all at some point like rolled over, like with one eye open on the phone because you're trying to like send a note to self. You're like, did that thing get done? We're all guilty of it, right? But in my world, that other eight belongs to my family. I've got kids that are growing. I have a marriage that also requires attention, right? I have to tend to my garden. And so I stop myself because I'm not as tempted to add to the work eight if I know that it's because I'm having to rob it from somewhere else.
Right.
And so lastly, what I would tell employees that we're contemplating, because, there's those, I give them that first pitch and they're like, hey, I'm totally comfortable making that sacrifice or whatever. Whenever you have to sacrifice something for a long period of time, it breeds resentment.
Yes.
And so now when you start to feel that, there's, sayings and things, anything that costs you your peace of mind is too expensive. And so I've had to, case in point, I ran a book of business that straddled both coasts. I had customers in Ohio as well as California. And so what I did at that point is I used to go into the office every morning, 8 o'clock, run my meetings, tend to my, my East Coast customers. Then I would shut down my computer, commute back home, set the computer back up again, and then run, basically I work like a split shift.
Okay.
So that I could, kind of cover both sides. And it stretched me too thin, And so I would have to explain to customers, dear East Coast customers, I will come on approximately 9 o'clock your time. So yes, there's going to be a little bit of a lag, but guess what? When it's 5 o'clock and you're shutting down, I'm still running, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So it might not be real time, but I'm still responsive. I'm still handling business. And same thing for West Coast. So people, you train people how to interact with you. And when you are known for quality work and again, when you hold up your end of the bargain, people are willing to wait to work with you versus the inconvenience that being off by 1 hour or so, may cause. So you have to put boundaries in place.
Oh yeah, most definitely. The boundaries help. And to your point, like even those people that are like, well, I don't understand. Like I'm the client. You should take care of me. Like if they're untrainable, you don't want that client. Like even if it's worth like a ridiculous amount of money, it's still not going to be worth it because one, they're never going to be happy. Like I mean, like if you set the boundaries and you're pretty consistent, you're factual about it and pretty specific. And they immediately want to violate those boundaries, they're always going to violate it. It doesn't matter how wide the boundary is, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, and thinking about it in terms of that trade-off, like, look, when you're single with no kids, you're not thinking about trade-off at all. It's like, all right, well, I'm either going to be at the bar or I'm going to be at work. So I might as well work until it's time to go to the bar, and then I'll just go back to work the next day. For me, I can tell you, like, yes, setting some of those time frames is helpful when I can stick to them. I sometimes get so immersed in things that I'm doing that I go over. So I try even not in a non-COVID world, I try at least one day a week to be home working. For family time, and then Saturday all day is typically my family day. And then Sunday, I usually work a half day in the office, and then the other half day is, dinner with family and stuff. I can tell you the way that I recharge my batteries. I'm a little self-destructive when I get wound down. And for some reason, you would think that doesn't work, that it actually has a negative effect. But believe it or not, I do kind of gain a little bit of at least enthusiasm to go back to like the normal world afterward. But so I'm lucky to work in a space where 3, 4, 5 times a year I'm in Atlantic City or some other area that has gambling and alcohol and the occasion. the occasional hit of nicotine, live music, all of that stuff, like that's my jam. If I can get like 2 days doing that, there's actually a story. Anyone who's watched the 30 for 30, I am not by any means this extreme, but anyone who's watched the 30 for 30 on ESPN about the Bulls and Michael Jordan, there was one point in time during the final season of the second three-peat where Dennis Rodman had like held it together and been like a very functional member of society and the team for like a long period of time because Scottie Pippen was sitting out, and he went to the head coach and he was like, look, I need to go to Las Vegas for like a week, right? Like just not show up. I just need to go like get it all out of my system so that I can like come back because I've been holding it all in. There's definitely a couple of demons in me like that, not nearly to that, extreme. You're probably not gonna see me on the cover of a magazine in women's underwear or anything, but not that I know of anyway. But yeah, that's definitely kind of the way I recharged my batteries is I need something where, having so much responsibility, most of the days, I need a couple of days that are just, call it what you will, frat boyish or juvenile or whatever. But is yours that crazy, Precious, or are you more a Netflix and kind of like chill out kind of person, or what?
What I have appreciated about myself here in the past couple of years is that, again, the
Brett said it sounds like I'm a sales guy. Yes.
fair, is that I get overwhelmed, and so I kind of ride these waves of sometimes I want to connect, and I'm just constantly like I need to be feeding myself industry stuff and looking into because we're that nerd, right?
Yeah.
And then there's other days where I realize that I need to mentally disconnect and like go to something where I can just veg out mentally, where it doesn't require me think about it. So, for me, that might be some, just completely pointless TV. I got into a little episode here where I was like watching like 90 Day Fiance. I don't know why. Like I was like, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, but you're just sitting there, and again, because there's no plot, there's no deeper undertones. It's just pure, mindless, entertainment just for laughs, right?
Yeah.
And so I normally, that's kind of my decompression valves. I have to laugh. I'm a laugher. I laugh when I work. I laugh when I sell. And so when I can kind of, let off steam that way, that's normally my go-to, because life is so it's so fleeting. It changes so quickly. My oldest is going to be graduating high school here in the next 2 months, which I still I'm practicing saying that out loud. And I look back at the, during the duration of her childhood, early in career, the travel that was required of me, the time away from home that was required of me. And I ask myself sometimes, I'm like, okay, everything in life has trade-offs, don't get me wrong. And I appreciate the chances to grow and how I developed, as a professional, but never at the expense of those things that I can't get back, you know? So I've got a very boisterous 6-year-old who's constantly growing. So being fully present for my family, because that is my chief job above all else. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, on top of being an agency owner. And so I have to make sure, I'd read an article that really kind of challenged, got me thinking about that more. And it was dispelling this whole concept of work-life balance. Because we say that as if they're both equally as important.
Yeah.
And so even though we're passionate about what we do, we don't live to work. We usually work so that we can afford some sort of lifestyle, whether that's, in the season of being single, married, kids, no kids, whatever that is. But it's that why. You've got to go back to the why do you do what you do? What makes it worthwhile? Oh,
yeah. No, and that was one of the reasons why. So I first of all, she probably won't watch this, but I'm married to a saint. She's incredible. She's an amazing mom. She's an amazing partner. That whole question that we had, I forget if it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, about who would you want to be trapped in a foxhole with? Hands down, without any question, she would be my 1 through 10 on the list, right? But I work really well in bursts. I
Hmm.
don't like, I know a lot of people say like consistency is key, but you can have consistency in different ways, right? And so you can be consistent in the, 9 to 5 every single, 5 days a week or whatever. That's consistent, right? My consistency is, 4.5 days, just like an animal for 4.5 days until I'm finally like, okay, I need to step away from this, and that just seems to work for me. And to my wife's credit, like she adapted to that. And I told her up front, I said, like, you can't do anything wrong. So like, if you feel like I'm taking advantage of you with my schedule or anything like that, like, first of all, I'm very thick. Okay, so like, smack me upside the head and be like, no, like, you need to be home and like hang out and that kind of thing. So I gave her that pep talk at the beginning, but she's been able to adapt with me, which has been extremely helpful. So I think that's also something that we're beginning to learn with COVID is like, if you are really passionate about something, like you said, it's something that you can get lost in. Like, I can get lost in this job for weeks on end, and like, I pop my head up and I'm like, wow, like a month has gone by, and sometimes you just have to build in those moments where you take stock and relax. Vacation time, when it can happen in the world, is nice. That's always nice. A week where, and this is the one thing I'll tell the people like me, if you're someone like me and you get really impassioned and just like buried in your work, or involved in your work, when you do take a vacation, take a vacation.
Yes.
Like, get away, turn the phone off, divert your email any way that you can, like, and super hyper focus on your family or your friends or whatever it is that you're, the people that you're getting away with and are close to you. Like, I can't stress that enough. So a couple comments from Tony. No, I'm not the sales guy. I mean, like, you're. I like to underpromise and overdeliver, but Tony sets the bar extremely high. And this one, I can neither confirm nor deny that this happens, but Tony did say every so often, when you're a mega broker, you can get some post-loss policy changes or coverage, depending on what the circumstances are. I am not going to say that ever happens, but you know,
Imagine that.
yeah, if it does from time to time, I am not aware of it. So, but yeah, no. Look, I love what I do. Like, I love what I do. I know that you love what you do, and I hope that people can find that passion, and more importantly, that if they find it, that they find some place where it gets cultivated,
Yes.
and it doesn't end up getting squashed because they try it tries to get bundled into a specific type of box or a shape or form. Any parting words on why you're passionate about sales, or how folks can kind of like find their passion for sales if they were ever curious about it?
So, iron sharpens iron. Surround yourself with other people who are like-minded, who also have a passion for the same things that you're passionate about, so
Mm,
that they can help you kind of recharge or rekindle, because we all need that on occasion. Also, it helps you to remember that because you're not on all the time, passion, it still ebbs and flows. There's going to be days where you're just not completely head over heels, the honeymoon phase or whatever you want to call it. But you got to have something that grounds you, that brings you
mm,
back.
yes.
And so as long as you have that, and you understand that it's a disservice to burn yourself out,
Mm.
and so that's where passion becomes that piece that gives you that renewed, that second wind. So I'm sorry. Can you share Tony's last?
Oh, hold on. And publish a Precious Isms collection of Southern quotations.
Southern
Yes.
quote. Yeah. So apparently, he's kind of throwing me in the same box as like Dr. Phil with my Dallasisms, my Texasisms. Hey, I'm just waxing poetic, man. It's what I do. But no, we just have to find that, because passion is also contagious, and it relays, right? And so your customers see it, your carriers see it. So when people know that you strive to do things well, that you're committed, that they're in this for the long haul, it helps to, make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because it's going to make you more successful. You're going to get a taste of that, and you're going to say, this is where I'll be as long as I'm able.
Yeah. No, that's all fantastic advice. Look, if anyone has even an inclination of being in sales, like, just give it a shot. Don't think that you have to be an expert at it at first. Lada wants to get isms trending here. But don't think that you have to be an expert, like, right out of the gate. You're probably going to be bad at it. It's like relationships. Most people are really bad at relationships when they first start. Like, you got to learn, and there's trial and error, and you make mistakes, and there's all kinds of stuff that happens. But you just kind of have to keep plugging away at it. But try and maintain the passion.
We're here, if it's something that something that either Matt or I said that resonated with you, that you have questions about, that's the other thing that I really enjoy doing, the activity and encouraging others. So again, these 2 phone calls that I took from people in my personal circle, and what an honor that your name's like synonymous with insurance, that, even people who don't know you in that professional light, when they heard that there was an insurance concern, they still brought it to you, right? Because, again, this is a passion, a labor of love, what we do for the society, what we, bring and share with you guys. And, we want this to be as beneficial as possible. So connect with us on a personal basis, comment, like, share,
Hell, we'll bring you on the show.
We sure absolutely.
We are not below that. We will bring you on the show. So with that, I think this was a fantastic episode, even if we did kind of shoot from the hip a little bit on it. But it was a really good one. Reminder, if you made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, share. Help us out with the algorithm. Big ask, if you don't follow us on Twitter, please follow the CPCU Agent and Broker Interest Group on Twitter. It's at CPCUA_B on Twitter. We always throw stuff out there, and you see some of our meetings and things like that we put out on Twitter. We're really active on there. So if you don't follow us, please follow us. And then also a plug for 5:30 Eastern this evening. Precious, are you going to join us for this?
I've got plans to be there. I do. I see this as a cattle call, all hands on deck.
We might not have an audience. I think we have like 10 CPCUs showing up for this thing live. We're going to have 10 CPCUs talking about their favorite moments from annual meetings past. Definitely something to help us get to hopefully the next annual meeting where we can all see each other and interact and maybe even hand out a couple of hugs and stuff like that. But there's always shenanigans. If me and Tony are there, there's going to be shenanigans. I'll tell you that much. So, 5:30 this evening. Definitely check it out if you have time. And thank you very much. We will see you next week at 3:00. Have a good one, Precious.
Thank you. You too.